Hello, 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 and welcome to another episode of Emerald Lake Books Live. I am pleased to have one of our authors with us today. His name is Lionel Binnie, and Lionel has written a book called The Future of Omni-Channel Retail. And in it, he talks about some really interesting concepts about understanding the cross-section of where consumers and retailers need to meet in order to be able to sell whatever product there is. Now, of course, in your case, because you're an author, you're looking to sell your book, but this is going to be true for any kind of business, whether you're a coach or whatever else that you're using your book for. You want to make sure that you understand what these expectations are. And he has a really neat framework that simplifies it. So we're going to talk through a little bit about the framework first after I introduce you to Lionel. And then we're going to look at how consumer expectations are changing and how you can adjust in this disruptive time that we're going through. So welcome, Lionel. It's nice
Hello.
to have you with. Whoops. Hit the button
Thanks
twice.
for inviting me, Tara.
You're welcome. I'm looking forward to our conversation today. It's going to be a good one.
Yes, it certainly will be.
So what prompted you to write this book in the first place? How did you get into this study?
Well, I have been working in retail for most of my career, partly in real estate, partly in business development, and this has been for different consumer products companies like fashion companies that did kiosks in shopping malls and airports, high traffic locations. So brick and mortar distribution, what we now call pop-up shops, is a category that I did a lot of work in, like putting kiosks into airports and malls. And then later on in college bookstores and college food courts. So now I do consulting and I do business development in that kind of space for consumer products or food companies. And it occurred to me that it's very, the question of, to what extent online is going to take over much of retail was an open question. There were a lot of people who, basically there were two camps, the people who were promoting online retail as an alternative to brick and mortar retail, the Amazon camp. And then there were the shopping mall, Walmart camp that were saying, no, we think people still want physical shopping, and there's a future for it. So I wrote the book just to force myself to do the research to answer that question to my satisfaction. And you just did a lot of reading and a lot of thinking about what's going on, and came to the conclusion that online, offline are not really opposed. I mean, they are in some level, but from the consumer's point of view, the consumer doesn't care at all. They just want what they want, when they want it, in the way that they want it. And, and that's all that really matters. So anyway, that's a fairly long-winded answer.
So what I really liked about the fact that when you came to us with this book, when you first mentioned omni-channel retail, I had no idea what it was. So I thought it was going to be very academic. It was going to be something that, I really wasn't going to understand. And what I loved in reading your manuscript was how much you simplified it to the extent that any business person could understand these needs and how to find this cross section between where the consumer wants to see something and where the retailer naturally wants to be. So I'm going to kind of bring up a couple of these images from your book, and let's kind of talk a little bit about it. So this first one is about engagement, and tell us a bit about what this is telling us.
Well, I did a lot of study of academic marketing analysis of shopping, and sort of traditional marketing books that talk about the 4 Ps of marketing, which is product, price, place, promotion. Actually, maybe it's the 5 Ps, but we'll just stick with the 4. And so they analyze shopping products as convenience products, specialty products. There are different ways of categorizing how people shop for, a can of soup or a car. you know, anything ranging from, a can of soup to a car or a house. And how do people feel about it? So low engagement is probably the can of soup. It usually has to do with price and the longevity of the product. And then a high engagement is something where people do an awful lot of research and they talk to their friends and neighbors and, do exhaustive online research and consumer reviews. Maybe it's a laptop computer or their next TV or a car. But it could be, if you're a gourmet cook, high engagement could be food. It could be getting the exact type of salami from your Italian deli. It's very subjective, but it's basically how much you care about a product.
And so would this apply then as well to services as well as products? So I know our books would all be low engagement, but say we're a coach or a consultant, would that be more of a high engagement thing or mid-level?
Well, I was really thinking about that, as consumer. In other words, it's something that you're buying for yourself. Business consulting or services are, I would say they've got to be high engagement. Going to a doctor,
Mm-hmm.
here's hiring a lawyer, that's a high engagement situation.
Mm-hmm. So here's the other axis of our two-axis framework, which is the homogeneous projects and the heterogeneous products. And I have no idea why they don't sound alike, given the fact that most of the letters are the same.
Yeah.
But tell us about this one. What's this mean?
Well, that's marketing terminology. Homogeneous means products that are interchangeable. And so, in other words, a 500 BTU air conditioner, whether it's Whirlpool or GE or I don't know who else makes them, Panasonic, if it's functionally the same, it has the same specs, or a computer with the same kind of speed chip and screen resolution, they're somewhat interchangeable. Mm-hmm. Because they're mass produced and they're based on certain specifications. And if you know that you want to cool down a 400 square foot bedroom, you need a 500 BTU air conditioner. So you can shop, you know what you're buying. The heterogeneous just means they're not the same. And, organic natural products like avocados are the premium example of that. Produce, meat cuts, fish, cheese, things that are not standard that, could have variables. That would include craft items. It could include, handmade tables, artwork, jewelry, lots, there are a lot of things that are either made in very short batches or are completely unique, like a weathered garden table that you might buy at an antique store.
All right. So when we take them,
so heterogeneous means they're not mass produced. They're almost unique.
Okay. And then when we take those two axes and we put them together, you end up with a very interesting quadrant model. Now, when we're looking at these things, how do you see this changing? Because one of the things that I was looking at as I was preparing for this was actually the fact that this is based on where time is well spent and time is well saved. And of course, now there's a third category of time being safe. So how do you see this kind of changing now?
Changing now? Well, you mean virus now?
Sure. We're dealing with a significant disruption. Yeah. So that's got to change consumer buying habits and where retailers need to be intersecting.
No, it is. And I've been reading lots of Wall Street Journal articles and listening to podcasts from retail experts about what really is happening. Mm-hmm. I think that it's as people recover from panic about the virus and they realize, for most people, it's not that dangerous, although everyone has their own anxiety level. But basically time well spent, the type of shopping that you want to do in stores and malls was where you wanted to go with other people. It's a social event. You want to combine, shopping for clothes with having lunch at a restaurant with a friend, leisurely browsing through the Apple store to learn about, your next iPhone. So those are things that happen. That's an enjoyable shopping experience, which you want to do in a live brick and mortar situation. Time well saved is where you are buying for the fifth time, a product on Amazon because you know what it is. You know what you're going to get. Like I buy tube socks on Amazon, and I've been buying the same brand for years because why reinvent the wheel? They work and it's one click. And I hate buying socks that don't work, that are the wrong texture. So people, time well spent. Internet shopping is where you know what you're going to get is what you're going to get, and because it's tried and true, you've tried it, or you know what that you're going to get this computer with the right specs. So you're confident to save yourself the time and hassle of going out into a physical store. Now, of course, the tables are turned, and if you're worried, I'm going grocery shopping. We live in Portland, Oregon now, and I'm very comfortable walking down to our local Fred Meyer to go shopping. I'm not very worried about the situation. So in other words, but the point is that people seem to be, most other than essential shopping, most brick and mortar venues are closed. So it's sort of, I don't want to reinvent this type of thinking for the current situation because I think it's a very short-term event, and 6 months from now it won't be a factor. It'll hardly be a factor, I think.
I think very differently. I was actually talking with people during a networking meeting the other day, and we were all talking about how people are finding other substitutes for things like retail therapy that they used to make use of because.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. So, but I don't know where it's going exactly. But I believe that certainly once there's a vaccine or some pretty good therapies, it will just fade from memory. It will become a non-event, and people will revert to how they were before. So, how can we operate during the uncertainty of that next period of time? I don't know, but basically it's going to become a legal government issue if your mall is allowed to open in your state and the shops in the mall are operating according to the guidelines that they've been issued. Then that's how we're going to be living for a while. Actually, Kroger, I was just listening to a very interesting podcast about what's happening in retail, and Kroger, the grocery store company that owns many brands like Fred Meyer, they've just issued a blueprint. It's basically a how-to manual for every kind of business or many kinds of businesses. It's at the KrogerCO.com blueprint. So the TheKrogerCO.com/blueprint. And it's a blueprint they're basically giving a lot of best practices away, but because they want to help the business communities open up again.
Well, I know for us, it's been very important to really start focusing on the fact that consumer behavior has changed. And when it comes to our products, for the short term at least, focusing on digital assets like ebooks and audiobooks has been very important because the print times are so much more delayed. So there's a lot of different things going on that we've had to adjust ourselves just to make sure that we're meeting, as I said, consumer expectation where they're looking to buy. So focusing more on the internet sales than on physical sales. So
yeah,
interesting.
Well, I think that for in terms of how people, to me, what this virus situation is doing is it basically, there's tons of people pontificating about this, but basically, it's highlighting the strengths and weaknesses of online versus physical retail and distribution. So, I think that.
I think it's also opening up some interesting ideas, though, as well, because brick and mortar stores have had to figure out, all right, in the absence of people being able to come into our stores, how do we remain useful? And so, like you talked about the fact that when you have those tried and true things that you like, you just repeatedly buy them. My mother was telling me recently that there was a certain shirt she found at Kohl's that she really liked. And so she simply went and bought 4 more of them in different colors and styles. So as a result, when she placed the order online, Kohl's gave her a barcode for her phone. She drove to the local Kohl's store. She held the barcode up to the window. They came to the car with her bag and said, "Do you want it in the trunk or the back seat?" And that was how she shopped. And so being
and that was new for her, probably.
It was very new for her. And I think it's new for Kohl's as well. I've never heard of them doing that before. So, thinking outside the box about how can you take that online experience, that retail experience, and blend them together in a way that's something that's neither one or the other. It's not completely in either camp.
That's what, that's the concept of omni-channel, because so basically it's going to accelerate the online combination solutions and very quickly. So how that translates to a small retailer or a regional retailer is that they've got to just if they're not very good, if their online side of the equation is weak, they have to get past that immediately. In other words, they have to become obviously very good at online sales rapidly if they want to have any kind of business.
Right.
Because nobody knows how long this is going to last. And we don't, you're right. We don't know how people are going to, if their behavior is going to change long term and how much. But basically anyone that's not omni-channel now needs to be, yesterday. So if you don't know how to work with Amazon, if you're not familiar with Shopify, if you don't know how to do Facebook marketing and you're a small local merchant, now's the time. Now, this is how you should be using your time.
Pick one, though. Don't try and do everything at once. Pick one, figure out what's going to work best, implement it successfully, and then consider what else you might add in. It can become completely overwhelming otherwise. So be cautious.
And if you're a restaurant and you haven't figured out delivery yet, whether you should do it or whether you should do it yourself or use DoorDash or Grubhub, now's the time to read all those ebooks about how to do that. And, is it worth it? Because if you don't figure out delivery, then you won't be in business. So, in one sense, so it's just going to accelerate. This is just accelerating, the adoption of anything digital. It's just a massive accelerant. And, if people like us that sell business services, same thing, like we have to figure out how to do marketing like this podcast, this webinar. We have to get familiar with doing business online without any local networking or whatever. So it's accelerating. I'm learning how to do webinars. I'm learning. I'm blogging constantly. I'm doing lots of content marketing.
I've actually attended quite a few networking meetings that were online networking meetings. And, over Zoom, things like that. But even the character and nature of those have changed in the sense that people aren't so focused on what do you do for business. They first want to connect personally. How are you doing with the isolation? And I think that is shifting things because it's actually a great way to start building significant relationships quickly and being open that way.
Yeah, here in Oregon, I moved here 3 months ago. And I started doing some in-person networking and going to some good business conferences locally, and then everything shut down quickly. But now I picked up a lot of those things online, and I'm actually helping create some content for a local entrepreneur network that helps small businesses and startups, like a business accelerator.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to help create a playbook for how to restart. So this Kroger blueprint is extremely good because they're doing that for the whole business community. But I think, we need to create how-to manuals on how to do Shopify, or, like how to have an e-commerce website up in 7 business days.
So I'm sure you're going to be blogging about some of this information on your website.
Yeah,
so I am adding that to the comments for anybody that's interested. But that would be Lionel can be found at discoveromniretail.com. So he'll be sharing more information about that along the way.
And also msourceideas.com.
msource ideas.
I do more of my blogging there.
Okay.
But because the Discover Omni Retail is mostly book focused.
All right. So I've put that in the comments as well for anybody that's interested. Just come to the Emerald Lake Books page. And Lionel, I'm just going to move you off screen for a moment while I sign off for the rest of the session. So as always, Lionel, thank you for coming. I'm really glad that you were here. I'm glad that we've been able to have this discussion. And hopefully it's given folks some ideas. Do you have any final things that you'd like to say before I sign off?
No, I just, whoever is out there listening, good luck in your business endeavors and hang in there. Definitely. And everything will be okay, even if it's not okay.
Mm-hmm. All right. So I'm going to sign off for now. So thank you again for attending this week's session of Emerald Lake Books Live. I hope that you found it useful. If you do have publishing questions that you want to find answers to, we do ask that you reach out to us at emeraldlakebooks.com. We're always happy to talk to anybody about publishing and about how they can use their book to build a business or brand. If you are interested in watching replays of all of the earlier episodes of Emerald Lake Books Live, I invite you to visit tarasadvice.com. That'll take you directly to our YouTube channel, where I hope you'll subscribe and give us some thumbs up and some YouTube love there. The last thing is, our next topic for next week is going to be about treating your writing like a business. There's a lot of writers that we hear from and talk to along the way who will tell us, I can never find time to write, or they're very regimented in how they do it. They get up an hour early each morning and write. But there's a lot more that goes into having a writing business than simply sitting down and writing. So we're going to talk about some of those aspects and how you can become a successful writer if you focus on the business portion of becoming a writer. So until then, be safe, stay well, and we will see you again next week. Thanks for joining us. Bye.